Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're going to be talking this time about older toddlers, really. No longer possibly in the baby bracket, from 12 months to 24 months. And we're going to be talking about sleep and toddlers' sleep. It's part of SNOO's Sleep Support Month, and myself, Liz Day, and also Sam Saunders are here to give you lots of tips, advice and information. Some of the common things that you'll be going through, issues that generally always occur when you've got little ones, and certainly with regards to sleep, and hopefully give you lots of reassurance as well. So for the start, what I'm going to just inform you about and let you know is my background is psychology, child development, and worked with many families over a large number of years. And also I've worked with a number of companies as well, advising them and training people with regards to baby development and lots of practical baby care. And Sam, do you want to give us an overview? Hi, Sam, of what you do and work that you do with parents.
Hi, Liz. Yeah, I'm Sam Saunders, and I'm also known as the baby guru, and sometimes even Mary Poppins. That's come in a few times. So I help families all over the world with sort of gentle parenting and baby care. So it could be that you need some help with sleep or routine, or feeding or weaning. My background is as a nursery nurse primarily, and then I worked in the NHS in midwifery and in the health visitors team now, and as a parent and baby coach, as I say. So I sort of have many different platforms. I do video consultations and plans and in-home stays when COVID isn't here. So yeah. I've been doing this for over 15 years now.
Oh, wonderful, actually. I mean, all of that knowledge and information I think is going to be really helpful, I think, for parents of those older toddlers. And to also realise, I think the important thing is here is sort of, to give you the confidence and really to empower a little bit, the confidence to do what you might be feeling you want to do at the moment and just wondering the steps to take. And also, I think, understanding what normal sleep looks like. I think it's very easy, actually, and all of us can fall into this, and certainly before, being parents as well, the reality of having toddlers and children, and also life, life can be very complicated, and that can also have an impact on what's happening with regards to sleep. But actually sort of keeping to some of the basics and keeping some good sleep practices in place really has a tremendous benefit. And the reason we talk about sleep so much is because we know that it has physically, emotionally, it has a tremendous effect on us. So not just on us, but also on our child, their mood, how they eat, whether they want to eat, all of those sorts of things have an effect. And so for good sleep, good healthy sleep is tremendously beneficial for all of us. And also we, as parents, we function that bit better, of course, when we've had a chunk of sleep or we've had a fairly good amount of sleep. So now we're getting into, Sam, that wonderful age group, which is those toddlers that are just, their development has just made, goodness me, from what they were a year ago. They're now possibly starting to think about walking, they might be crawling, all of these very physical activities, but also they've got the the language side of it is starting to emerge. Even though they're not necessarily saying words, there might be lots of babbling going on, lots of gestures going on. So they're doing a lot of wonderful sort of activity here. And we know that this can sometimes mean that they're tired when they want to go to sleep. They're using a lot of energy up, but also sleeping at the times we ideally would love them to be sleeping. And what would you say again? I mean, we talked about this when we were doing the other video for 6 months to 12, but what would you say for this age group, which is 12 months plus, 12 to 18 months, say, what would you say is a good, sort of routine for a family with this little one? Roughly, sort of what the flow would be or what you'd be looking for?
Yeah, so between round about sort of 15 months, between 12 to 15 months, little ones sort of drop that first nap of the day. They often drop it a little bit sooner if they start nursery, and we'll talk about sort of how sleep changes when they start nursery, but roughly between 12 to 15 months, they drop that morning nap, and they show that by either fighting it, or so they take longer and longer and longer to fall asleep, and then eventually it's nearly lunch times, or that they take it really happily but then they won't settle for their second nap of the day, the sort of after lunch nap, and then it's an awfully long time till bedtime. So you know, if that starts to happen, then I would sort of cut that morning nap down in small increments until it's been removed, and then bring the lunch nap forward. So normally I'd say the lunch nap is about 1 o'clock, but you might need, as they're adjusting to 1 nap a day, to bring it forward to say even 12 o'clock. So you do an early lunch, then down for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then they're awake for roughly 5 hours till bedtime. And again, you know, if they're dropping that nap, it's about adjusting that bedtime forward. Maybe you've been having a 7:30 bedtime, but it's a good idea for a little while just to bring it forward to maybe 6:30 for a while they adjust to that, losing that morning nap. And that one nap a day that's in the afternoon, as I say, can be anything from, some babies only need an hour, but on average it's an hour and a half to 2 hours, and that lasts them for anything up to maybe 2.5 years. And some children, until they go to school, that we all need different amounts of sleep. So, but on average, sort of about 2.5, 3 years, they drop that lunchtime nap. And then they're sort of going all day, full steam.
And what would you say with regards to the, you know, the sort of morning times with this toddler, this emerging toddler? I mean, is this a time to be doing an activity of some kind? There's lots of different baby classes, you know, a lot of them are online at the moment, but, you know, there can be a wonderful thing to do that's sort of doing that activity, keeping them entertained. They're not particularly interested in that nap any longer. And also it does something that fills that time, or for some of that time in the morning.
Yeah, so having a, you know, at the moment an online class, but, you know, once we can get back out and about, you know, the sort of toddler classes they do, or, you know, if that's not suitable for you, then going out sort of thing, and going maybe to the park or out for a walk in the mornings and getting some fresh air is really important. And then maybe in the afternoons you do sort of more quieter sort of at home activities. You know, they wake from their sleep, they might be a bit sort of sleepy for a little while, so that's when to do maybe sort of more quieter, you know, they love things like Play-Doh and sort of things like that from that age, and water play, and you know, household little plastic things they like to play with, and sand play, and those sort of at home activities.
That's quite good, really, because it's sort of the dynamics are changing a bit. You know, you've got this toddler that could be waking up, and then you've got a structure in the morning, which is a bit out and about. But then you've got this lunchtime period, then, you know, sleep time, and then you're doing something in the afternoon, maybe later on, that's actually quite calming, you know, but still fun. You know, still got different activities that you can think about doing at home. And also, I mean, it's certainly if they're going to sleep around about 6:30, they're going to be in bed. When would you be starting, you know, this sort of, I suppose, their meal time, you know, their sort of their tea time, probably round about maybe, you know, 4-ish, 4:30 possibly. And then I would say sort of 4:35 for sort of dinner time. And then I would you know, if your little one struggles with sleep for sure, or settling, is not having screen time from then, because that definitely has been shown to have an impact on settling to sleep and sleeping. So maybe have music on there, maybe read books with them then. So doing calmer, quieter activities, and then heading upstairs for sort of bath time by 6 o'clock for sure. And sort of doing that lovely, you know, nice warm bath, and they love that playtime, and then sort of getting them ready for bed and having a story, and then settling them down for the night. How would you do it with regards to, I know lots of parents, you know, can do have a bottle, you know, they're still giving that comfort or the breast, they're giving that feed before baby goes down to sleep. How, you know, because of these emerging wonderful teeth and caring for their teeth, you know, when's the best way to do that, really, you know, so that you can sort of clean their teeth possibly, or get into that routine of cleaning their teeth before they go to sleep?
Yeah, so I would suggest that you know, they have their feed, whether it's breast or bottle, or a cup of milk if they're not having, if they're sort of moving on from breastfeeding and you don't want to introduce a bottle, is that they have that maybe in their room, and then a story, and then brush teeth, so that it's not about sucking to sleep anymore, because, you know, if you're finding that your little one does wake in the night and they want that that feed again, it's probably because they've had that comfort to go to sleep at bedtime. So if you sort of stop that association at bedtime, you can brush their teeth, and then they won't need it in the night. You'll know that night waking, and you can give reassurance, settle them back down again, but without giving that feed again.
Yeah, and also it's, again, it's also keeping the teeth, isn't it? Looking after teeth health, which is really good. And we know that sort of any milk that's close to the teeth, is going to sort of not be such a good thing. It's going to stay there for a fair period of time. The other side of things as well with this is, I know there'll be a fair amount that use the dummy. They find dummies are quite good. They've got into that routine, and of course, there's mixed views about it really with regards to when to ease them off, but how if this is working for a family at the moment and they're just using it for sleep. I mean, that's one of the things that I always say to parents, is this is actually for settling and sleep if it works for you, but also it's very important during the day. The dummy is just not used because it will have an impact on speech development. It really will, could influence that. But what's your sort of take on that?
Yeah, again, like you, I sort of think if it works for your little one and you're not having to find the dummy in the night for them. So if they do have one in the night, make sure there's enough in the cot that they can find them. So you're not having to sort of go and find it off the floor sort of thing. So, and it's fine. And, you might decide to sort of wait until they're a little bit older when you can negotiate dropping the dummy rather than making it a battle sort of thing. But, if you are ready to take it away and you do want to, then it's using some very gentle sleep coaching to remove that association with sucking to sleep.
Yeah, okay, that's wonderful. Yes, no, I think it's good to know that sort of early routine, and I have to sort of prepare for that. I think that's really helpful, and to know that actually from the sort of 4ish onwards you're starting to prepare for actually going to sleep time in the evening. So the other thing is that I suppose what may encounter here with the older toddler, they're fairly clever, they're very clever at this stage of knowing what's going on, is how do you deal with one, you might have a little one that's loves all the stories, etc., getting quite tired, but does protest a little bit when they go down. And the other one is as well, is what to expect during the night with regards to nighttime waking, or waking up for a little bit of reassurance, or possibly, I know we've talked about it, what should be happening ideally at this age group with regards to feeding during the night.
Yeah, so from a year, unless your baby, for a medical reason, needs a feed, there is no need for feeding in the night. And feeding in the night can lead to them not eating well in the day because they're having what milk is a meal, so it has an impact on their day appetite. And we talked about teeth as well, so they don't need that milk at night, and their requirements for milk in a 24-hour period from a year is from about 280 to 340 mils. So they can easily take that in 2 feeds, maybe morning and evening, or a cup of milk sort of twice a day, and in yogurt and cheese, their intake of that as well is into that equation. Okay. So if they do start to cut that bedtime feed out, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to, when they wake in the night, they're hungry. You need to be reassured that might be down to sort of a development leap or any of the other things that night wakings can be due to.
Okay, and I think this older toddler stage, how do you deal with, you've had a little toddler that's been good, generally going to sleep and fine, and all of a sudden, they've started to sort of make a bit of a fuss when they lie down and go to sleep. Is it best in a way to sort of, stick to your, resolve a little bit at this time, and sort of think, no, just give that reassurance straight away, but actually stick to your guns, I suppose, a little bit. If you've had a good routine generally, and just making sure baby, of course, is very well and not, coming down, not sort of feeling poorly, but actually just realize this is just one of the things as they develop, they will want to sort of try out, and they'll want to, this sort of experimenting with different ways of engaging and communicating with us.
Yeah, I mean, they're you know, it might start at a bedtime battle sort of thing where they want one more story and another drink, and it's about being resolved and saying, no, we have 2 stories or 3, you know, you chose your stories and that's what we agreed, and it's bedtime now and I'd like you to sort of settle down and go to sleep. And it's about going in and out and giving that reassurance, and you know, sort of laying them back down and, as I say, reassuring them. But and again in the night when that happens as well, you know, sort of going into them and giving that reassurance, and not being tempted to sort of think, oh, I take you into my bed, that's so much easier, you'll go back to sleep again then. If that works for you, great, but if it doesn't, that habit can start very easily then. And you know, other things is look at, you know, is it happening because their routine is changed in the day, or they need to cut down to 1 nap? Maybe they're teething as well, you know, that can have a massive impact on their night's sleep. And as you said about illness, all of those things. So it's, you know, if it's not down to teething or illness, you can be strong and sort of resolved that no, we're going to stick to what we do. You normally sleep in your cot, and I will come and give you reassurance, but I'm not going to keep picking you up, and I'm not going to get you out.
Yeah, and I think I like the idea of another, you know, sort of aspect of, you know, baby being ill, you know, that we were talking about, is that if your baby's going through a phase, or your toddler, should I say, is going through a phase of not feeling so good, and you're a bit worried, is actually to try and just take yourself to their room. I know it's not always maybe the practical, but, you know, just being able to possibly put a mattress down and sleep next to them. And I quite like that idea in a way, because I think it's you know, I think we've all done it, you know, got an ill child and you just think, oh yes, pop into bed, and then of course they get better within a couple of days, but then they're wanting to, oh mummy, you know, can I come back in the bed again, if they're older children. And actually, you know, maybe it's not the most comfortable for you for a little while, but actually long term, maybe it's a good way to sort of try and think about dealing with that.
Yeah, but you know, I totally agree. But if you do decide, then it is about, when they're well, getting back on track again, and sort of, you know, as quick as it's come undone, 2 or 3 days, you'll get it back again, because you just need to be, you know, little ones from around about sort of 18 months are very good at pushing the boundaries. That's, you know, that's their development. They want to feel in control of things, and they don't have a lot of control in their life at that age. So the 2 things they can control is what they eat and about sleep. So they fight sleep, and they might fight food as well. And they're 2 things you need to be like, you know, sort of try and step back from it, and sort of not be too stressed by it, but stick to your guns.
Okay, that is really wonderful to know. And I suppose it's the same applies a bit, doesn't it, as well, is if you've got a little one that all of a sudden wakes up in the middle of the night, you know, sort of 2 o'clock, wide awake, you've done everything right. Oh my goodness, why, you know, they're wide awake, you know, what's happening here? And then of course, you know, it's very easy to think, oh my goodness, what is going to get them to go back to sleep quickly? And you end up sort of, oh well, maybe you could pop into our bed for a little while. And again, that sort of so for nighttime waking, when they're wide awake and really not wanting to settle, I suppose the first thing is, if it's unusual, check they're not poorly, you know, they're not ill, you know, something's not going on there. And even check, I suppose, you know, have they got, you know, a poopy nappy, you know, do they need their nappy changing, has something happened? But then if nothing's wrong, is to soothe, you know, the child, you know, and also to keep them in their cot, you know, to stay there a little bit, but soothe. And also, you know, how do you feel if actually they are, you know, for development wise, they're awake at that time for some strange reason, is if you've tried all the bits, but they're awake and they've stopped, you know, they're sort of not, they're murmuring a bit, but they're not particularly distressed, is just to leave, you know, the sort of your, you know, if they're in a safe environment, you know, to leave baby at that time, or your toddler.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely sort of a few occasions up until this sort of age where they're going through major leaps and they're taking on board a lot. And a bit like us, if we've got a lot on our mind, we might wake in the night and toss and turn, or we might wake early in the morning, but we're fine. We don't need anything. We just need to sort of process what's going on, think about it, and then go back to sleep. And babies are no different. So if they're certainly around about 18 months, they're absorbing language and beginning to speak and say, you know, putting words and sentences together. So they often wake in the night, and they might just have a little chat, and it's about, they're fine. If there's nothing wrong with them, they're absolutely fine to leave. And, you know, they're in a dark environment or dim, and they're not being stimulated, and they're not being over sort of, you know, you're not waking them up and picking them up. So they will settle back to sleep. And it is a short period that will pass.
Okay, I think I like this, you know, short periods, trust your instinct, and sometimes actually you just need to wait and see. I think the other thing is as well, with regards to product side of things, if you have a sort of little video monitor, you have something by the bed, you know, that you can sort of not too loud, so it's not disrupting your sleep too much, but you can see, you can just pop and, you know, every now and then you can check and see what baby's up to, or your toddler's up to. And that brings us sort of round a bit, you know, sort of the product side of things. It's mainly, you know, saying very similar to what it was when you've got your 6-month-old. But I think the important thing is always to check and remember that the mattress base is on the lower level, because you've definitely got a very active toddler in there, and just double check that. Sometimes, you know, it's very easy to forget you've got it on a middle level, not the bottom one, is to make sure it's on the bottom one. And also to just make sure that when you look at the baby's room, always think about what they can grab. Their development is, everything's going so quickly at this stage, and just something left by mistake close to where that cot is, they'll pick it up straight away. You know, they'll sort of spot something new because they're inquisitive, you know, they're wanting to find out more. So always keep an eye on safety. I think that's the important thing. And I think later on, you know, where this is a bit later on, but when you've got a child, a toddler that's walking and actually in a bed, you know, you've got this 2-year-old, think about safety, think about the things that might help you. We had a little gate put in front of the, you know, the child's bedroom. You know, the door was open, the gate was there, and then we knew there was no possibility if that little one got up, you know, or was upset in the night, you could hear them, of course, go to them, but you knew they couldn't get near the stairs, and they wouldn't be that wandering around thinking, oh my goodness, and you know, if the lights are not on and things like that. So think about safety, you know, what works for you as your little one gets that little bit older. I mean, some of these items, of course, are for when they're little and for when they're babies, but other items you may still be using, you know, the white noise, you know, the sort of these different toys with soothing sounds. But again, be careful where they're located and placed. They're not a toy, so to speak, so they need to be in a place, you know, that's safe, that they're not going to sort of get access to. And the other thing is as well, you know, this is still a time where they're in the baby sleeping bags. Very useful, very easy to use. And of course, you can do the layered approach again, you know, depending on the time of year, but also depending on the weather, you know, what the weather's like, what your home environment is like as well, is always taking that into account. And to bear in mind, if you have a child that's got a temperature, you will have to remove quite a lot of those layers for a period of time. You know, keep an eye on the temperatures. There's some wonderful thermometers now that are very easy, immediately give you an idea of what that temperature is, and to just keep an eye on those sort of things. But I think product wise, I don't know if you can think of any other things, Sam, that I may have missed there that you sort of think for this age group.
You know, sometimes some parents sort of want to introduce a little night light, and I would suggest, if you do, that it's a red base light, not the blue light. There's been a lot of research into that recently, about that disturbs sleep less, having, you know, a little sort of red light. And it, you know, if you're having to give reassurance, it'll stop, you know, if it is very dark in there, it will stop you sort of falling over, maybe, sort of thing. Out. So, but it, you know, it might just give, if your toddler is waking, some reassurance that they can see in the room. It isn't necessary, but if you do use one, I would suggest a red light.
Yeah, I think that's quite a nice idea, actually. I think I've found a lot of children, and also older ones as well, they're very reassured about that. And I think also a bit on the safety side as well, you know, even having one in the sort of hall sort of landing area, you know, that actually as older ones get up, and, you know, you've got your older child that's going to be getting up occasionally, well, you very much hope so, you know, your 3 or 4-year-old might occasionally get up to go to the loo. So to know that you've got that in place, if they can have this independence, because I think that's the thing is, you know, what we're sort of encouraging really with children is for them to be independent sleepers, you know, to sort of being able to sort of soothe themselves to sleep and to gain this skill, I think, which is so important. I mean, I know that's something that we've talked about before, Sam, that is that, you know, this is what we want to, if we think about it sort of in the longer term, what we're looking for is we're wanting, you know, this young child that will be in situations where they may go for sleepovers, they may go and visit, you know, with to see grandma and, you know, relatives, and they want to feel quite confident, you know, although it could change a little bit and they could sometimes get a little bit nervous, but most of it, they just, you know, sort of enjoy their sleep, you know, they find sleep an enjoyable time.
And also, if you're, you know, if you're expecting another sort of baby coming along, and they're, you know, they're going to be an older brother or sister sort of thing, it's a, you know, it's good to have them in a really good pattern and a routine, so that you can pop them into bed, and then, you know, you're not going to be having, you know, unless they're ill, of course, you're not going to be having to deal with their sleep issues as well as a newborn's as well, because, you know, if you remember how exhausting it was those first few weeks and months of being up at night feeding. So having them in that good place well and truly before another one arrives is a good place to be.
Oh, absolutely, isn't it, as well? And I think that's where it's sort of really useful to have, if you're working as a partnership together, if you're with, you know, you've got a partner, is certainly as, you know, baby develops and grows, is that actually you both get used to settling that little one. I mean, sometimes it can be a bit tough when they're really tiny. It ends up predominantly one parent that tends to do it, which can be fine for a period of time, but I think over time it's best to get it to where it's a little bit more balanced, because especially if you've got a new baby coming along, your other half is you know, is fine to go along and to know that actually this is what you've been doing about settling your toddler or your older child. It doesn't mean to say that it won't, of course, when a new baby arrives, all of a sudden decide to say, oh, you know, I want mummy, or, you know, I want some, you know, daddy for whatever reason. But I think it's good that, you know, you've got this balance as they get older, that you both know, you know, what sort of a little bit of I suppose, a routine in place that you're both happy with and you can use for your particular child. I think that's, you know, sort of it can be very, very helpful. But the other thing is, I think sort of we're moving on a bit from the sort of best environment for sleep, which we've just briefly mentioned, is I think moving on to the common, you know, sleep problems that you might come up against with this age group. And some of those are changes that happen within your toddlers, just what we've been talking about a bit then. But I think one of the sort of big changes that might happen, and this could certainly be different at the moment as well, but it still will be a change, is whether, you know, mum decides to go back to work, or, you know, the routine's going to change quite dramatically from having, you know, both parents around, and the little one might all of a sudden be going to a nursery, or could be going to a childminder. So it could be going to a new home or a new environment. Actually could well happen in this second year of baby's life.
Yeah, there's quite a few things that can affect them with these change. You know, it's changing routine, as you say, from going to nursery, and they quite often they're normally around, as I said before, about 15 months when they drop that first nap, but it's quite normal once they go to nursery, if they go at a year, that first nap will go quite quickly, and they just have a lunch nap. So it might be that sort of happens for your little one, and it might be that the lunch nap isn't also quite as long for a little while as it has been at home. So that can affect their bedtime settling. So it's important that you bring that forward slightly. So as much as you want to get them home and play with them for maybe an hour or so, or 2 hours, it's because you haven't seen them all day. It's about, actually, I need to get you to bed. You're really tired, and you know, we'll have our time together on another day. So it's about sort of getting them to bed early, giving them lots of reassurance. And it's quite normal for them to wake in the night once they go to nursery for a little while they're settling in. You know, they haven't seen you all day, and that's normal. You know, we all go back, most of us go back to work now, and it's about giving them that reassurance when they call out in the night, yes, mummy or daddy's here, it's time to lie down and go back to sleep. It might affect early waking as well, because if they're, there's a lot of stimulation when they're going to new things and doing new things, so that can sort of affect wake up times. Teething can affect their nights, and I often find that when they're teething, they've been bit grumpy in the day, they've not been themselves, and they wake frequently in the night. They keep waking up and you're like, something's bothering you, or if they're not well, you sort of see this little, they just keep every hour or so, and you're sort of, yeah, this isn't normal, something's bothering you. And that's definitely when to sort of, go and check them over, and if you do give anything for teething, that's when to give it. Illness as well, and if they're starting nursery, they often in the first few months pick up lots of sort of colds and sneezes and things like that. There's a lot more bugs around, and especially now they've probably been at home for a bit longer and not been exposed to maybe all those bugs and things that they normally would be.
That's probably going to be sort of, it's going to change quite a bit actually. And I think that's the other thing to remember about nursery or childminder, or whoever's caring for your child, is just have good communication with them, what's going on, what's happening, and also what's, especially with regards to sleeping patterns during the day, and the routine when they're eating and sleeping. And I think you're absolutely, don't hesitate to ask if you need more information, saying, sort of, and especially to inform them, if all of a sudden you find that maybe been at nursery for 6 months and everything's been fine, and then all of a sudden something's sort of really sort of something's happening with your child and is changing their routine, then do speak to the childminder and also the nursery, because something during the day could be impacting on what's happening at night, and also to just really keep an eye on that, I think, which is a very, very helpful thing to do. So changes could have definitely an effect, I think, on this, sort of age group really that's actually going on. I think the other thing is as well, I think, with regards to, what we're going to cover in this particular session, what we thought would be quite nice. We've covered some of the questions that you asked, which was very, very, really gratefully received. And we try and make sure we incorporate them within some of the questions that we're talking about. But we're going to now just sort of answer some of the specific questions, a few of them that we thought could be quite helpful, I think, really, to sort of cover, because we know that they can pop up, sort of quite a bit of the time. And one of the ones, that we chatted about was when you've had a little one, maybe around about 15 months, that's been co-sleeping with you, and you've followed that routine, your choice as parents, and all of a sudden maybe you're getting to that older age and you're thinking, I wonder how we can sort of, maybe sort of change from this, get this little one into their own cot.
Yeah, it's really important when I help families with situations like this, that you're very mindful they've spent a lot of time, many months, with co-sleeping, and that's going to take a little bit of undoing, and you really need to be very gentle in the approach. So using some very gentle, gradual retreat sleep coaching. So it might be that you initially move, you go and sleep in their room with them, so that if that's possible, if you've got a spare bed in their room, that you actually go and sleep with them in their room, so they get used to their environment. And then you do that for a few nights, and then you do a very gradual sort of sit on the bed next to them while they fall asleep, and then it would be stand at the door while they fall asleep. And you do this over, it can take a couple of weeks, but it's about remaining with them the whole time, giving them that reassurance from bedtime that things are changing, and that in the night you do exactly the same as you've done at bedtime. So it's always, whenever you make changes with sleep, whether they're 6 months or 6 years, I always say, start at bedtime, because the association of how they fall asleep at bedtime is really important as to how they go back to sleep in the night. So, as I say, certainly with any baby that's been co-sleeping for a length of time, it's always a very gradual, slow stay in the room approach initially, and then sort of move away. So it's called the moving chair, and you sort of move yourself backwards and backwards, sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds, a really gentle way to do that. And I think it is important because if your little one has got used to being in bed with you, for a fairly long period of time, then it's the certainly the gentlest way to do that. And also to give it time as well for yourself. You have got, as a family, you've got used to that. You've got used to that. So doing it gently, I think, means as though you won't lose the resolve as well, because I think that's what can be very easy with this one, is when you're going through something that might be for a couple of weeks, that your sleep's going to be a little bit disrupted, but actually long term, it's going to be better. But if you have a particularly bad night, that you just think, oh, well, maybe it won't harm and I'll take the little one back in again, it can sometimes feel as though it's sort of a bit, you're going, you're not sort of heading in the direction quite that you want to be going in. So I think, setting it up. And also, the other thing I'd say with this sort of scenario is putting the time aside that you can give to it, and that sort of mentally you feel in the right place. There could be other things going on that is going to be just a bit too tough to do it at a particular point. Well, you do it when it's right for you. You do when the time's right for you. You've done this for so long anyway. To wait another little while is probably not the end of the world, and certainly to do it when you've got other things going on, maybe in family life, or something's happened recently that's been upsetting. Don't put that extra pressure on yourself to do that. Babies and children are very, very adaptable. We do forget this sometimes, that they are quite, really adaptable. If they're loved and they're cared for and, they're kept safe, they'll sort of adapt, to many situations that are changing, really. And, it just, bear that in mind, keep it in mind, really. So going to some of the other questions that have come out. I think one of the things we've, and I think we all have had this at times, is you've got an early riser. So you've got wonderful sleeper, but all of a sudden you've got this child that wants to wake up at, I don't know, 4, 5 o'clock, or even 5:30, so it is morning time. You can't overly blame them a bit, but actually not many of us really want to get up at 5 or 5:30 and start the day at that particular stage. And it's what sort of things, remedies, or what things may help with this, Sam?
So there's a few things to look at. One is environment. So if it's the summer, is it the light waking them, or the birds? That dawn chorus from 4 o'clock, if you've got the windows open. So, think about maybe if you haven't used white noise, that might be something, that'll, from bedtime, that will help with that sort of blocking out that really loud cheeping in the morning, the light. So maybe use some blackout blinds or some darker curtains. So environment is one thing. The other thing is looking at their day sleep, that they're not having too much sleep, or that they're having enough sleep, they're getting to bed early enough. It might be that maybe they're going to bed at 6:30, and you could slowly move bedtime on a little bit, just maybe 15 minutes every few days, and get to a 7 and see if that's a sweet point and gets you a bit later, or even 7:15. I wouldn't say any later than 7:30 though. But you might just need to adjust your day. The other thing is if they do wake and it's not rewarding that wake up with straight downstairs, I want to watch Peppa Pig or something like that, or TV. It's about, no, that's fine if we need to get up now, but we're going to have quieter time now. It's not rewarding that early wake up with sort of TV or, something like that. There's nothing wrong. A lot of parents bring them into their bed at that time, and if that works for you, that's great. But if that has an impact in the night, what can happen is that gets earlier and earlier and earlier, and you end up, they come in at 1 o'clock in the morning, and that's where you need to be firm again and stick to your guns about, no, you sleep in your bed. But anything from 5 o'clock isn't unusual, I have to say. Some babies are just early risers, and so are some of us. So I say to parents, if they've tried everything, if they've ticked every box and they've made sure everything is you need to get to bed early yourself, and this period will pass again, this time, which I know is really frustrating when we say that, but if you've tried everything, it's one of those things.
It is. There's a good point there, actually. What do you feel about, sort of, because these are older toddlers now, you're not in that category of being the, sort of the young babies where we have to be very careful about what we put in the cot. But what about the older ones, you know, sort of if they wake up early, you know, a few little board books, you know, sort of a few items in there. I mean, how do you feel about that? You know, sort of few items that are safe for them to have. If they choose to, you know, they're wanting, you know, they're sort of awake, but actually you're not quite. You know, it's that 5 o'clock point. You're thinking another hour would be wonderful, you know, just before. And again, it's not overly rewarding it by taking them out of the cot.
That's right.
How do you feel about that?
I think a few little board books wouldn't hurt. You know, maybe have them that they can reach from their cot, so it's not something they're going to sleep with in the cot, but they can get to them. You know that. You know, I would avoid sort of soft toys, but certainly books are fine. And you know, just a few little board ones they can sit and look at, and maybe if they have a comfort blanket or something like that already, that they've got that for sure. But you know, that's fine. That's still safe sleeping. They're not in their cots all night with them.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, that's good. I think there's a good tips there actually for the early risers to think about considering. Actually, I think that'll be very, very helpful. So this is an interesting one. The 23-month-old has dropped the naps, doesn't have naps anymore, and now is exhausted by 5 o'clock. What would you suggest, you know, with this particular situation?
So if they've dropped their naps, then you know it's about having, you know, they're exhausted, but it's about having an early dinner and then some quiet time. So keep the, you know, I wouldn't sort of be taking them out and about then. It's about keeping it quiet and calm and get them into bed. You know, start your bedtime routine by 5:30, 5:45, and get them into bed early. Going to bed early if they're doesn't necessarily mean they're going to wake early. It could be that it'll stop them waking early, because if they go to bed exhausted, it often means early wake ups as well. So it's about responding to your little one. And it might be that some days at that age, they do have a nap and then they go a few days without. That's quite normal when they drop that nap, that they have maybe 2 a week for a while. And then they start getting used to the whole day awake.
It's very different, isn't it, actually, what children do with regards to naps. You know, I think I remember my son, he had naps until he was 3. You know, he's quite happy to have an afternoon nap just for an hour. And, you know, sort of, and yet, you know, sort of my daughter, you know, she was just very, very short, you know, sort of didn't really want too much of a nap and dropped the naps, you know, sort of quiet. So do you find this, you know, is there a particular, I mean, I know we can't be sort of every child's unique, but is there a stage that ideally little ones generally do need to have one nap, even if it's just a short one, up until maybe about 2, do you think, or just sort of under that age?
I would say 2.5 is about when the earliest they normally drop their nap. They usually need something, even if it's only half an hour or 20 minutes. It's just having that little cat nap, that boost when they get over that age. Whereas you say some children, one of mine slept every day until he went to school and he was 4.5. So I was lucky with that one, but the others didn't. So they are all different. It's about responding to your little one, but also if they do drop that nap, having that quiet time so that they might not go to sleep, but maybe they will sit and watch something on the television. You have a little bit of screen time, but they sit down, they're a bit calmer, they're not running around, or you have music or books and you do quiet activities for a period, so that they're resting, but maybe not sleeping.
That's a good idea, actually, as well. I know that I've suggested this as well, you know, with little ones that come back from nursery, or, you know, they're sort of in the afternoon, they're not really wanting to sleep anymore. They're picking them up, they've had lunch, but you can tell they want something just a bit sort of quieter. And some of the things like you can get like some of the good, you know, sort of educational programs for half an hour. I mean, one of the things I found recently was Sesame Street on YouTube. And, you know, again, it's a very educational based program. It's quite nice. You can interact a little bit, you know, with your little one, and they can sort of just have a time where they're doing something that's relatively calm and they're sitting for a while. And you're right, they are getting a bit of energy back. You know, they're not sort of as often, which toddlers are, you know, they're sort of full speed ahead, you know, when they're sort of doing their normal, you know, running around and the activities that they do. So, that is some of the questions. Sam, is there any other things, any other points that, you know, think we may have missed or that we want to mention, you know, for this age group, and also I suppose for, you know, for and beyond, you know, sort of things, any little tips, I suppose, for sort of this, the older children, which I think can get easier. I mean, some parents may disagree with me on this, but I think once you've got language, there's a lot of things that you can use with language with regards to sleep, you know, sort of gently speaking to your child about what's going to happen, you know, preparing them and letting them know, you know, when you're going to be changing or things are going to change with regards to their normal sleep routine, possibly, you know, that may be upsetting them for some reason.
Yeah, I think always being, you know, sort of explain to your child if you're going to make changes. They understand far more than maybe they can vocalize. And little ones, often over the age of 2.5, 3, respond really well to like sticker charts, reward little stickers, you know, so it's about, you know, maybe they're having a problem settling at bedtime. You say, okay, you know, if you settle to sleep, you know, mummy might need or daddy might need to come in many times and reassure you. But if you do settle to sleep, we can have a little sticker. And at the end of the week, we can maybe make biscuits together or cakes together, or we can go, you know, or we'll go swimming or something like that when we can do things. So it's about, you know, having small expectations that they can achieve. So they might still wake up, they might still make a fuss, but they're going to listen to you and respond and stay in their bed. And you know, you might need to sort of in the night again sort of remind them of that as well. You know, you've done really well, but it's time to lay down and go back to sleep. We don't go into our bed, you know, we stay in your bed, and you'll get your sticker in the morning. And it's you know, that often works with little ones, sort of.
Yeah, it is. It's having that conversation, isn't it? It is a bit like treating them a tiny bit like when they were little, though. It's having that lovely conversation, giving reassurance, but then not keeping, you know, they'll do many things to try and keep you going back, you know, or please can I have another drink of water, you know, please, you know, it's once you've done it once, is trying to stick possibly, you know, to that, you know, not sort of going back in there and sort of repeating it.
With any sort of sleep changes, it's about staying calm and consistent with them and very patient. It takes lots of practice for them, and you need to, as a parent, stay calm and patient so that you can be consistent with them in what you're doing, so that they understand there's a new routine of the way we do things, you know, like a dance sort of thing, you know, and we change that rhythm of things. We're not doing it this way, and I'm giving you reassurance that this is why we're doing it and everything's fine. And mummy, you know, we as parents are happy with these changes.
Yeah, it is. It's actually when you're doing it, you know, coming from that, you know, they can see, you know, that they've got that positive reinforcement from you and from your partner, and you're sticking, you know, sort of to, and then the child, it becomes a bit more, in fact, it can become a bit boring because they're not getting the response they thought they were going to get. And I know, I don't underestimate, I know it's quite hard not to get emotionally sort of a bit of caught up in it, but to just sit back from it and think, actually, you know, if I just sort of realize that this is just this phase that's happening at the moment, and just to sort of stay calm, stay reassuring, so it's going to be the best thing for my little one, actually, for the long term. I think that's really important. So I think the last point from myself, I suppose, really, which I've mentioned, is with regards to your child, always get it checked out if something occurs or happens and you're not sure about. Sometimes it may not be to do with sleep, it could be something else, or your child could be a little bit unwell. You know, always trust your instincts, check it out with your health visitor or your GP. They are definitely available and they're there to give you help and support. The other thing is, as well, is mental health. When you're dealing with sometimes possibly a baby or a toddler that's got you know, sleep is just not going well, you can feel quite fraught, and that's natural. And also to feel at times it can get to where you might feel a bit low and a bit anxious about it. If you do, there's great resources out there. Mind is very good, actually, some of the information that they have, and it's just educational information to explain what's happening, which sometimes can make us feel so much better. So look out those resources. NHS Direct, very good, lots of information online for parents. You know, is look for that information that you trust, that you think is good advice. I would say be cautious about Googling too much. You can get overwhelmed a little bit. There's some really good books out there, you know, that you could consider, though. Get a good couple of books on, you know, baby development maybe. and on these aspects, really of, sleep, and then stick to it, rather than sort of dipping into many different information and resources that are out there. The other thing is as well, I know, Sam, you've got help and support that you can provide to parents, so certainly with regards to sleep.
Yes, I work on many levels. So from a video consultation up to a bespoke plan, as I said, to homestays in non-COVID times. But also I have a sleep app on the App Store called the Baby Guru Sleep App, which has a method for little ones, which is sort of respond, reassure, repeat. And it's about giving consistent reassurance over and over again, giving them a little bit of time to self-settle at the beginning, but then it's frequent sort of reassurance and a, sort of verbal and physical, it's about going into them lots. And it has so lots of tips and guides on there. It has a routine on there for your age little one as well. So, I love helping. My passion is sleep. And if anybody does need any help, I always answer emails. I always answer text messages. I'd be delighted to help any of the parents out there with their little one's sleep or routine, for sure.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, I mean, the app is just, it's very easy to download, of course, from the App Store. It's a small cost, $3.99, but then you've got it forever. Yes. So if you have other children, you've got it to dip into. So I think that's a really good suggestion. I think, to have that as a resource, sort of handy and nearby. And I think that's the other thing, with regards to, sort of sleep and your child's development is, always to, have a chat with somebody and talk about it. Don't sort of, if you've got things that you're a little bit worried about, don't suffer in silence for it. And also to know that once you've got the information and you know what it is that possibly, you can see the little habits that have crept in, is, just realize that a lot of these, what we've been talking about, and the reason we're talking about it, and also we get, sort of very sort of, extremely enthusiastic, is because we know they work.
Yeah.
If you gently just think to it, just calmly think. I mean, that's the hard bit, is just not to get too stressed. But if you calmly think, this is something we're going to do just for we're going to stick this, for our 7 days or for as long as it takes. If you consistently follow and just do this in a very gentle way with your child, you're not deserting your child. You're going to be there. You're not going to help them, soothe them over this period, which at the beginning they will find it new, and naturally what they do is sort of be a little bit cry at some of the time because it's just a change. But you can even be, as Sam and myself have been saying, you can be sitting in the room, in the corner of the room. But the thing is, your presence in there, they know they're not being left, but also you're just not engaging. It's that engaging with them. You're able to sit there, sort of, mummy or daddy or, parent is sat there and just being particularly boring. And it's the best thing to see it as, just to be, and that will eventually your little one will be thinking, I might as well try and sort of think about going to sleep now, actually, instead, we'll give this a try. But look, lots of reassurance there, lots of advice available, and definitely sort of the app, I think, could be something that you could consider and to download. So you've got some great tips there. But thank you so much for sending your questions and very much for listening to us. Hope you found this really useful, and enjoy, sort of your developing little one. That's, it's a wonderful time, to sort of spend with your little one. And I hope you found these sleep tips really useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.